We're back and we are joined now by Bruce Peterson. Bruce retired from Walmart as the GMM for perishable for Walmart US. Bruce, thank you for coming in and joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We're going to talk about kind of what's going on at Walmart now. You obviously are not there and moved on. What do you think they're doing right? And what would you continue to do if you were still there? And then what do you think they need to change? We'll start with what you're doing right, what they're doing right.
Well, I mean, clearly they've done a number of things with respect to making the consumer experience in the store a little bit easier to shop. They went through a period of time, as you know, that they got maybe a little bit sideways with their merchandising direction and what they were trying to do. I think directionally from a marketing standpoint, they've got navigation in the store is much better, and they've cleaned up a lot of the noise, if you will, that kind of cluttered up some of the marketing messages they were trying to convey. So I think that those are pretty important things. They've come out recently, as you know, and talked about a concentration in the produce area, which is near and dear to my heart, as you know. And they're talking about applying some training to 70,000 people or so and trying to enhance their produce offering. And I think that that's a very, very good thing because, you know, reputationally, whether I was there and, you know, back in the day, we didn't necessarily have the greatest reputation in fresh foods, and so they're trying to market that and put a lot of concentration on that.
Okay. Now, what would you change if you were there? And we're going to talk about produce, and Amazon coming on with their Amazon Fresh, delivering produce to homes, not just produce, I think dry grocery as well. Thoughts on that? I mean, we've talked earlier today about how Walmart isn't really a competitor with Amazon and e-commerce. Is that a threat to Walmart with the younger generation, millennials in particular, that are very comfortable sitting down behind a computer, pulling out their smartphone and placing orders and know what they want to do? Even for mothers, I mean, my wife would much rather go sit down in front of a computer and look at something ordered on Amazon rather than pack the kids up, take them to Walmart, park out in the middle of nowhere to go to Supercenter. So can Amazon really go after Walmart in terms of the produce and the grocery side?
Well, I think that any time a company like Amazon comes out and starts talking about home delivery of fresh, that's going to make a lot of noise in the marketplace because clearly Amazon's reputation online is significant. So if they're going to try to broaden that offering in their portfolio to include fresh fruits and vegetables, that's going to get a lot of people excited about that. I think as a practical matter, you got to take a step back when you start talking about what Amazon's doing and ask yourself about the viability of home delivery of perishables, generally speaking. Okay. And when you start to think about, you know, we were talking earlier that people don't realize that Walmart actually tried home delivery here in Bentonville, Arkansas in the 90s. Now, maybe that might have been premature. Maybe this wasn't the market to try to test market that. But they did, in fact, recognize that there's a potential for that and what that might look like and try to gain some learnings. But if you think about it, there's generally a misnomer that consumers don't like to shop for groceries. And it's really not true. What people don't like to shop for is what you would call routine replenishable things, whether it's their tissue paper, whether it's yellow mustard, ketchup, man, the stuff they use all the time. That's just a pain because you got to go pick it up. But people, what they do enjoy shopping for are things like produce because it's a very individualized thing. If you think about it, my wife likes a little greener banana than what I do. So if I'm going shopping or she's going shopping, we got to say, well, I know she likes that, I like this. It's not a universal thing, whereas Diet Coke is Diet Coke. And right. So you get a lot more subjective selection when you start thinking about perishable foods. So that becomes the first challenge. And people generally do like to shop for that experience. So that's one of the misnomers, I think, when you start thinking about online retailing of perishables, that it's going to replace something that people don't enjoy doing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that if you think about, just take produce, for example. It's been long enough now so I can talk about some numbers. The average transaction back 7 years ago in the produce department was about 78 cents. Okay?
Minuscule.
Now, yeah, so let's suppose you say people are going to buy $5 worth of fruits and vegetables. Okay? You're going to have them delivered to your home. The cost of logistics to have that is significant. And so you say, okay, well, but they're not going to just buy produce. They'll buy their meat, they'll buy their groceries. So let's expand that thought process and say, suppose you got a $100 grocery item or grocery delivery.
Right.
And so you charge between $25 $20, $25 or so to deliver that to somebody's house, you're talking about a 25% increase to the retail of that product. Who's going to eat that cost, you see? Now, if you're in a major metropolitan area, and if you really look at organizations like Peapod that have been in this business for a while, they're generally speaking in high density areas where it becomes relatively efficient to go ahead and deliver that.
Which is what Amazon's doing in LA and San Francisco.
Exactly
and
right.
Seattle. Okay.
So the final piece of that puzzle, we've talked about the fact, do people like to shop for perishables or not? The cost of logistics in the whole process is significant. And thirdly, you've got what I would call operational execution. So if you're going to carry multiple food items that require different temperature and humidity requirements, both in the delivery vehicle itself and at the consumer's house, you have to have a receptacle to be able to receive that. Otherwise, you run the risk of degrading the quality of the merchandise in the transportation delivery mechanism. Well, you say, yeah, but we'll fix that. We'll just say we'll deliver this to your house between 2 and 4 o'clock. Well, what's convenient about that? We're just taking the whole convenience notion away. So I think for those reasons, I think that the online delivery, home delivery of food products, generally speaking, is going to constitute a relatively small percentage of the total retail dollar. Now, that doesn't mean to say it can't be a viable business. So, because if you're saying that a $700 billion food business, and if online retailing is only 1% of that, $750 million. And in many circles, that's a nice business. Yes. So I do think you'll see that, and I think you'll hear a lot of conversation about how that business is growing exponentially. 20% growth, 30% growth. Yeah, but it's still on a small base. So
now, what does Walmart need to throw out, or what are they doing that you, if you were there now, you would say absolutely we have to change that?
Well, I think Walmart, one of the big changes that Walmart, in my view, has happened over several years is this move toward private label. And back in the day, we actually had a very finite count of how many great value items we would have in there because we were viewed as a national brand house. And even in my own shopping experience, one of the high levels of frustration I might have is if I go in for a national brand of whatever, more often than not, that item is out of stock, but I'll see 5 rows of great value in that regard too. And I think what you're seeing is that because food is becoming a higher and higher percentage of Walmart's total revenue take here in the United States, that the margins are coming under a lot of pressure. And so you're seeing this yin and yang, if you will, in that it appears to me that Walmart is too willing to be out of a national brand item in lieu of having more space for private label on the shelves.
Okay. So. Now, we talked earlier about Supercenters, and you said you view Supercenters as Walmart's greatest liability, and if you were in charge.
Oh, sure. Give me controversial. Give me controversial.
Explain that. Let's go into. I want to understand the reasoning behind that statement.
Well, I think Walmart, and I was part of this growth, so I mean it was an exciting time for me. Walmart made a huge commitment to Supercenters, as you know, from the early 90s right on through the early 2000s, and putting up hundreds and hundreds of these Supercenters a year, a lot of brick and mortar involved in this. And you're getting a consumer that is less and less inclined to get that one-stop shopping format. They really, if you look at the proliferation of smaller formats throughout the country, both in food and the boutique type of retailing, you're seeing more and more of that. In fact, there's been a recent announcement, I say it's an announcement, there's been an indication that Lidl out of Germany may be coming into the United States. It would be a direct competitor of, say, Aldi's, those smaller formats. And I think, back to your early comment, I think one of the things that Walmart is doing very, very wisely is accelerating the smaller footprint box, whether it be the neighborhood market or whatever.
Or the express.
I think that's a very wise move on their part. See, the other problem you have in the Supercenters is you've got a very, very large box that is becoming more and more of a food destination shopping, which is a nice problem to have. But the margin, again, we run into that problem. And if you look at a lot of the other things that they used to sell a lot in the Supercenters, CDs, movies, those types of things. And I'm not saying you don't sell as many.
But they're all moving to download.
But they're all moving to download. And even televisions, if you're looking about how people are going to get entertainment, they're going to be directly streamed to their iPads or whatever that is they're doing. So it puts a lot of margin pressure on the Supercenter, and you still got that fixed expense sitting out there. So I think that that's going to be a challenge for them. But you know, they'll be looking for other utilizations of that, I think, and so it'll be interesting to see how that happens, because once you've built the Supercenter, that rascal's going to be there for a while.
Well, it's not just the building. You also have all the inventory that goes into that. If you break that up, I think you do the math, that's probably 3 neighborhood markets you could get inside one Supercenter, depending on where it is.
Well, you know, we were talking with somebody the other day about this. Back in the early 90s, the Anderson consultants put up what they called 3 smart stores throughout the world. And basically, it really started to talk. Now, remember, this was in the mid-90s, so what I'm about ready to describe for you is dated from a technology standpoint. But their idea was that if you were to, say you consume your last Diet Coke, can you tell them a Diet Coke? I made that reference twice. When you scan the last can, or drink the last can, you could scan it with a wand. Now you've got all the information stored up of what you need, and when you go into the store to shop for the things you enjoy shopping, you could have that pre-assembled for you somewhere else in the store. I think that thought process is still intriguing to me. Now today, you could take online and create your grocery order, transmit it to the store, and have all that basic routine stuff ready for you when you get there.
Kind of like a click and pull at Sam's.
Exactly right.
Same thing we did
And
at
to that
Wal-Mart.
point, I think the clubs are really geared to do something like that. Limited assortment, let me browse. You can do the treasure hunt thing. And I believe you'll ultimately see the Supercenters moving more and more to that kind of thought process, so that you use that box to let people shop for the things that they enjoy shopping for, and convert a lot of that space to having items pre-assembled for the consumer by the time they get there. And I think that's where a lot of retailing is going to be heading. I think Anderson Consultant was right on. Now again, this is back in the 90s. So
Prior to the dot-com boom.
Exactly.
You know, Walmart launched the Scan and Go. They begin talking about it, shareholders, and certainly from what you've said, that would probably tie in very nicely. I'd do my smartphone and scan it all at home.
You bet.
Send it, and then go and I can shop while they're putting it all together.
That's what I think. So I really think, to kind of come full circle on this, I think the whole idea of ordering things online in the Amazon thought process, where you order it and they have it sent to your house, I don't think you're going to see that proliferate very much in food. But along the lines of what you're talking about, I think that's where you'll see this evolution.
Okay. Well, Bruce, thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next Saturday morning.